And there we go.
General manager for Dean's Kia in Langham. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about Larry Feldman and Career Changers USA. Larry and I have been working together for about the last 12 years now, and anything I've ever needed as far as recruiting, training, Larry's been right there. Larry's got me salespeople, he's got me managers, he's got me technicians, even through the toughest times in the industry. And he is just the kind of guy who's going to tell you exactly what's on his mind. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. But Larry also has the expertise to back it up. When he was in the dealership world, he was a top performer. And that's really important to my staff, especially as it pertains to training. A lot of people can come in and teach out a textbook, but Larry has real world experience dealing with customers, dealing with situations in dealerships that we go through on a daily basis and try to train on. But Larry's been through it, so he can really empathize with the people and tell you what's worked for him and maybe what way not to go. Larry is just always at a 10. I mean, his energy level is always up there. And I think people, they just love that and they feed off of it. He's not faking it. He is genuinely excited to come in and help you. He's excited to come in and help grow your business. And he's one of those people who just really enjoys seeing dealers succeed and have a lot of fun at the same time.
Life is about connection, having a support system to lean on, and roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
So what would your dealership feel like if your entire sales staff was literally on fire, your sales and service staff? They were nonstop all over social media, completely dominating your marketplace. They could do it in 30 days or less and then continue their education to do it for an entire 6 months or a year. You literally would completely take over the entire marketplace and no one would be able to compete with you. And that's what we can do for you. So when you're walking around your community, whether you're at local restaurants or you're going to the gym, you don't want to be bothered? Fine, you won't be bothered. But a lot of people will walk up to you and say, oh my God, I love your social media. Your staff is amazing. We love what you're doing in the community. We want to come buy a car from you. We want to get an oil change at your dealership. Your community is absolutely going to love you. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. You could be on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all social media platforms. You will literally be all over the place. And not only will you have have ads running, but your own staff is going to be promoting your brand and promoting themselves within the dealership and within the business. So it's like running an ad times 100-fold because your entire staff is participating in the process. I've traveled all over North America. I've trained Toyota. I've trained Nissan. I've been driving sales. I've been to Women in Auto. I get hired as a speaker for conferences at universities all over the country, and I can help change the trajectory of your dealership right now.
Good morning. And if you're admiring the hat that I have, this is the new generation of AutoHub show hats. I will be sending them to our loyal following and sponsors and everybody else soon. I got the wrong one up. I want the other one. I'm just waiting on pricing and colors. So if you want a different color, these are one-off kind of designs. So I've picked a few books. Steve Picasso, Buy or Die, How to Sell Anything to Anybody, Joe Girard, and Driving Sales, What It Takes to Sell 1,000 Cars per Month. So go ahead, Jeff, with our disclaimer.
Good morning, everybody. And as usual, the disclaimer is the views, the opinions expressed today are those of our guest speakers and our guests, and not necessarily that of Ian and Jeff for the AutoHub show.
Cool. And we're going to talk today about inventory. Obviously, inventory is a challenge. If you missed the video earlier, Cox Automotive did a study, pre-pandemic levels. I think it was about 60 days in inventory. Now the average by brand is about 81 days. Some manufacturers have over 140 days in inventory. So if you are looking for a deal on a car right now, some of those manufacturers got a new problem, which is inventory. So let's get into it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, it's very interesting. What we didn't do on the live stream is show the statistics, and it's showing that there's starting to be a ton of inventory out there. The funny thing is on the specs that it showed is that Ram's got an average of 150 days, but they were the only brand that had inventory when there was no inventory because they kept building those old, the old model that started in 2010 and had 6 chips instead of 6,000 chips. So they got tons of inventory, but they were selling trucks too. So, gentlemen, thank you everybody. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Today is a kind of a free-for-all show, and it's a very interesting thing. As Ian said, for the first time in a long time, there's inventory. How big of a shock is this to dealership employees? And we'll go with just who logged in first. Peter Smith, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us what you're feeling on this. How big a shock is it?
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Smith. I'm from Lion Partnership. I really don't think this is a shock. This is normality returning to the car business. And for the last 3 years, we've basically been living in a bubble. And that bubble is about to burst. There's still car companies out there that have played this scenario right. Toyota is one of them. If you still drive by a Toyota lot, you're not going to see any inventory. They're back to Toyota, what made Toyota famous with just-in-time philosophies. So they're actually doing it right, whereas the other manufacturers are saying, "Hey, this is an opportunity for us to ramp up," and they oversupplied. And you look at it with Dodge or CDJR dealerships that you basically can go in and pick out any car, any color, and any spec you want. They're there. They're 162 days supply. What is killing the dealerships is the floor plan costs, and because the interest rates have tripled for car dealerships. And because they have 162 days supply, the CDJR dealerships are in massive concern. They're not in trouble, but they're in massive concern right now. So there's lots to unfold in this one conversation, and really it comes down to how do we stop the race to the bottom? Because inventory typically causes a race to the bottom. So how do we stop that?
Well,
that's the true conversational question I'd have for everyone.
and that was the interesting thing as I watched that video, and she was talking a little bit about payments and a little bit about types of customer and leasing versus financing. But more importantly, when you look at subprime and near prime, what you're seeing is the actual amount borrowed for subprime and gold credit is about the same. But what was really fascinating was the actual payments for people over the last couple years, but more specifically, the amount people are borrowing. So I think when you look at inventory, the biggest challenge is what does a manufacturing dealer do with too much inventory? But more importantly, what segments of the market should you be targeting? And what was interesting was that subprime customer that maybe 3 years ago you could get bought is now becoming a near prime customer because the subprime customer can't buy the car that they want to buy because nobody will finance it at the rates. So it was kind of interesting that shift in that bottom of the market, but also the amount of car they're buying versus, say, a gold credit buyer was about the same borrowed value, but also the delinquencies. The delinquency number, which was really interesting, was that there's higher delinquencies at used car lots now than new car franchises, but they tend to be higher on used cars, which was kind of interesting. But go ahead, Jeff.
Here's just before we move on from that. 58% of Canadian buyers are now subprime.
Wow,
because of what happened in the last 3 years. So we're sitting in a situation that we're in a definite challenge. The second part of it is that in the United States, a $20,000 car has increased by 2 model years from 2 years ago. So if you're looking at a $20,000 car 2 years ago, it's now 2 years older. So you got a 4-year swing now. So there's big challenges to inventory, affordability, credit. Everything is coming down the pipe, and it's coming down like the Hoover Dam is broken and it's going to wash out Lake Mead. So it's a big challenge.
Well, there you go. Exactly. John, I'm going to turn to you if you don't mind. John from Ultra BDC, and you're not a dealership guy, you're not an inventory guy, but you're a BDC guy. Are you hearing are you getting? Do you think this is a shock to dealers, and are you getting your clients are kind of saying to you, listen, let's start to panic a little bit?
I wouldn't use the word panic. I mean, I think it's more about pivoting, and it's more about rolling with changes in terms of where things were a couple of years ago, going through the inventory crisis, firing a bunch of people, firing sales guys, definitely shutting down their BDCs and stuff, not working with outsourced BDC providers anymore because there just wasn't inventory, to now having to move back into a mode where they do want people in the showroom. They do have to start fighting for business again. They do have to start earning business again. So I wouldn't use the word panic, Jeff, but I think it's a time for sort of tough decisions to be made in terms of how do we, when there isn't a lineup around the block for one new pickup truck, but now there's a bunch of pickup trucks, and how do we get them to buy the pickup truck from us rather than the guy down the road? It's good for me. Like it's good for my part, my small niche in the business where, yeah, they do need to start taking care of the client experience and the client retention side of the business.
Were you seeing this happen 6 months ago or a year ago or anything, or are you just sort of seeing in the last 2-3 months?
Well, it's been a steady kind of growth. You know what I mean? I stay in touch with my my contacts in the industry, and I'll stay in touch with them. Like every 3-4 months, I've got a Toyota dealer I stay in touch with, a Mazda dealer I stay in touch with, a Chrysler. People who own dealerships, and the news just keeps kind of getting better and better. So I talked to a guy down at one of the big Honda stores in Toronto just last week. He's the GSM there that I've worked with for many years, and he told me, last week we had the last couple months, our allocations were 10 to 12 Civics per month, like to our store. Now we're going to start getting 20 a month, right? It's not a lot. This is a high volume place, and Civics are the huge selling car. but little by little, it's building, it's growing. The allocations to the dealers are growing. So it's not an on or off thing, but it's a slow growth, a slow improvement.
Okay, no, that's a very good point. Larry, what's your thought on this? You tend to actually get one-on-one times with a lot more dealers than anybody else on the program. And are you finding this as a shock to dealership employees? And the reason I say that is dealers we would expect, the executives, the owners, the GMs, we would expect them to be connected. And if they are in shock, they're in big trouble. But what about dealership employees? If there's inventory on the ground, is this a shock?
It is. And the reason it is for the past few years, this business has been on autopilot. People came in, you pointed to a car, if you had it, you told them how much over they had to pay, and they begged you to take it. It was kind of like when the housing market was overheated, and a home inspection, you want it or not. So it's kind of a natural situation. There were no cars for years, and floor plan interest was zero. And now there's a whole lot of cars. Floor plan is high, so the dealers are sweating. And because of the interest rates, let's face it, what are most people? They're payment buyers. I don't care if they're making $1 million a year, they're still on a budget. All right. There is no car guy on earth that hasn't had somebody walk up to a $60,000 car and say, "Can I get it for $300 a month?" Sure, we'll do a 30-year mortgage. No problem. Let's call up your mortgage bill. But like everything else, it'll pass. When we went through, I'm an old guy. I remember I wasn't selling it. Hell, I wasn't even driving yet. But I can remember my mom having to go to gas stations on alternate days, depending on her license plate, because of the fuel prices. And I went through 9/11. In 2008, when the housing market blew up, it'll pass. But the cool thing for people like myself, like Mr. Smith, like our BDC buddy on the show, people that help with training, that help with making the people better, are rocking. Because man, do they need it? Even the stores that were good got sloppy. But it's not the end of the world. We'll pass through it. But man, the real time to sit down with your people and train them was to act like, I always say it, Jeff, you want to get rich, act like you're broke. If you want to go broke, act like you're rich. When everybody was making stupid money, that would have been the perfect time with no stress to say, "Hey, I know you made 30 grand last month for a salesman. Let's sit down and just sharpen our skills." I guess it'd be silly to expect that to happen. So I don't know if it's panic. I think it's a call to reality. There are guys leaving, which again, in my own selfish interest, is not a bad thing because I'm a sales recruiter on top of everything else. But it'll pay us. But let's face it, this is a difficult time because these interest rates are making everybody insane, and I don't blame them. I mean, how'd you like to be selling houses right now? And the people go look at the payment and they go, I can't afford it, or worse, I don't qualify. So I think there are trying times.
Interesting thing, in the Great White North here in Canada, we have something called the mortgage stress test. And it's a government mandated thing, and the people have to meet that in order to get standard loans. So what that means isn't that people aren't buying houses. It means that people are going to the tertiary mortgage market, and private lenders will say, "Yeah, no problem at all. Here's the money. We're fine. We're going to charge you this fee." It makes subprime car loans look like nothing. We're going to charge you this fee. We're going to charge you this rate. But the good part is you can pay it out without penalty.
Now, wait a minute, Jeff. Is this different than the normal stress test that Ian always claims he's under the Trudeau being president? I just want to make sure I got the right thing.
Absolutely.
Stress test is waking up in the morning and realizing you're eating another car.
Yeah. This is the loan shark. This is the alternative to the loan shark stress test.
Well, I have a good friend of mine. She's a real estate agent in Toronto, and just put out a cross Canada mortgage table, and using the minimum amount of money down to buy the average house in Toronto, it takes 50 years to save the down payment for the average person. 50 years.
So it's time for a new career choice.
Yeah. It's and that's pure base in the front, the
But wait a minute, Peter, it would be 70 years if you were a trucker because he froze their bank account.
so if we go to that scenario, just that scenario alone, and we look at it and say, okay, well, if it takes 50 years to buy a house in the third largest city in North America, how is that affecting car sales? And it's affecting it massively. And it's all to do with the choices, and I hate saying this, it's the choices that our governments made over the last 4 years. It's 100% on that. It's proven, it's actual data. You can see it, the CPIs, the inflation, the unemployment, whatever metric you wish to challenge, that is affecting the inventory in the car dealerships right now.
Peter, wait a minute. Don't blame the government. My favorite president, you know, I'm historian, is Harry Truman, the last honest president we'll have because he didn't want the job. And he said something brilliant. He said, "We get the government we deserve." When people don't pay attention to who they're voting for or what their real policies are, you know, because they like the way they look.
Gentlemen, if I can interrupt here, this is not the political hub.
Well, let me give you some numbers on interest rates, because I think that's a better discussion, Jeff. So I was looking at the interest rates for used cars on this data from Cox. So it was really interesting. So a couple years ago, the average used car rate for probably middle of the pack buyers was about 7.9%. So in 2024, it's about 11.3% interest. So part of the challenge might be affordability of housing, but the other part of the challenge is just your overall cost on a payment just on interest alone. So when you look at a factor of $10 per interest rate number, that's about $120 a month just in interest on a car loan. So the other interesting thing that was really interesting to me was when you look at leasing versus financing, the difference in payment on leasing versus financing didn't change a huge amount because the lenders, being the captive finance companies, are really not getting the point on leasing. Because when you look at the actual average payment, which I think went up about $50 a month on the average car in the US market based on this data from Cox, I'm happy to share it after the show. I think the average monthly payment for a car loan in the US is around $800 a month. So when you look at that, and obviously $120 of that roughly is interest. So when you look at it back, as Larry was talking about the gas crisis way back, and my parents, I guess in the 70s with interest rates on housing, which I think was around 12 to 14%, if memory serves me, you're looking at that payment from a 12 to 14% interest as it was based back then. But let's just say a car was $5,000 to $10,000 at the high end then. The average car loan today, and it doesn't matter if it's prime or subprime, is around $42,000. So that's part of the issue. So my question is, if I'm a dealer and I've got inventory, I got 150 days of Jeeps in the back, for example, wouldn't I be smart to really look at leasing, whether it's in-house leasing or manufacturer leasing, and say, hey, payments are probably not going to get better anytime soon. Manufacturers can't put 10 grand into an interest rate. Let's talk about leasing. Is that something that you're seeing in dealerships, Larry, as you talk to them? Are they really starting to embrace leasing as a discussion at least?
Well, the beauty of leasing, you guys know the drill. It started with an Audi, that there was a problem, they had to get back in the market, and every dealer went, well, this is crazy. How can you lease a car for 2 years? And then they all went, wait a minute, we can sell cars every 3 years instead of every 5 or 6 years. But again, I think the manufacturers are unscrambling. I mean, they certainly didn't have good incentives or anything going the last couple of years because there was no cars, there was no reason. So obviously, the way things usually happen, I know everybody will agree with me, is dealers talk, I have too many cars, and that's when they're reactive and reflexive, and that's when they change interest rates or they put a big rebate on it. So I think they're going to reach the point where dealers are going to say, I don't want any new cars. I got 9 million of the cars you already gave me. And I think at that point, we'll see a change. As far as how quickly it is, you'd have to be Nostradamus, because I always say with the manufacturers, like what we say about GM, it's ready, fire, aim. It always seems to be like they're shooting for the wrong target. But I don't know. Peter, do you have any more insight? I mean, I don't know when they're going to hit the switch and say we better do something, because this thing's going to backlog quickly.
Well, the challenge that I see coming forward is, one, when the pandemic hit, all the veterans that were at the point where timing was right for them to moved on. They moved on to different careers. They moved on to different opportunities. They switched to vendors. They did all kinds of different things. That left a vacuum in the dealership, so it became a hiring frenzy. And then once people found out how much money that they could make, they were entrenched in the dealership. Now that money is no longer there, so that hiring force that we had over the last 2 years is now gone. We have nobody trained. We have nobody understanding it. We have nobody actually understanding the financial implications of the last 3 years. And we're kind of running blind. And that's why when we sign into LinkedIn, we can see general manager wanted, JSM wanted, sales manager wanted. Everybody is wanted because we don't have that opportunity. Now, when we look at the leasing side of it, and this is an important part, in the United States, the average leasing penetration is 15%.
Ooh.
Versus Canada, at our lowest ever was recorded at 56%. We're typically around 72, 74% penetration on lease. So it's turning around that marketplace and understanding how to develop a new thought process to get rid of inventory.
Well, you also have that. You also have that interest. You also have that one thing about leasing. Just before you speak, Jeff, is when you look at your average lease in the U.S., it's a 36 months lease, where the most popular lease in Canada is 48 months. I think what you're going to see in the U.S. is a move to 48 months in leasing, but also an interest in more penetration, because it's really just affordability. Like, you've got to push that. Anyway, go ahead, Jeff.
What I was going to say though is very interesting, Peter, your comment on veterans saying, okay, here's the time to get out. I am seeing, and maybe it's just my world, my connection, a lot of them are getting back in. I know a few that got out of it. One guy in particular is a business manager, and he went into mortgage brokering and says, oh my God, this is phenomenal. And of course, the other day, just like everyone else, I have Joni, blah, 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 as financial services manager, because I'm seeing that many people are reaching out to the veterans to say, hey, listen, you were there during the war. And I don't mean the war, but you were during the war when everything was competitive and everything else. And now they're getting back in because the people that said, I don't need you, you bum, are saying, well, you got some skills anyway.
Well, I agree with that 100%, because what happens is wisdom comes with experience. You can teach everybody how to tie their shoes, to jump into their pants one leg at a time, whatever it is. But wisdom is what is the true factor in how we become successful in this industry. And you can't get that without experience. And it's a repetitive experience, because Larry, I can tell you right now, I can give you 800 objections and you'd be able to solve every one of them. But
Larry could solve 890 objections for 800.
Exactly. But the whole thing is, Larry can teach those to everyone, but they're not their absorption of those objections and how to role play them and get through them is only going to be a 10% grasp. So it's, yes, we need those people coming back, and this is one of the challenges, is when we look at the average income earned by a salesperson in a dealership over the last 3 years, and then what it's going to be this year. which is going to be about 60%, how do you get those people back? And 60% of what was earned in the last 3 years is still substantial income.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got a combination. You got a combination there. You've got people that are obviously used to making a lot of money at easy, but you also have people that are saying, "Hey, I need to get back to basics and train people." But more importantly, how do I deal with situations where customers are coming in hot and saying, "Hey, you know, my cost of everything has gone up. I need a car, but I need it to fit into a budget, right?" So, I mean, that I think is the biggest challenge is how do I explain to that customer the new reality, but more importantly, how do I make it palatable for them? And I think that's a question of really getting ahead of it when you're going into a car dealer, or the car dealer saying, "Hey, before we look at a car, let's talk about, where you're at and where you want to be versus the car."
Can I throw a point in there?
Yeah.
You know, you've seen me train, and you know that my focus is always on value and rapport and getting friendly with them.
Yeah.
I think the conversation has to get the elephant out of the room as quickly as possible and say, listen, obviously you probably heard some strange things about interest and this and that. Just be assured I'm going to do the best thing I can. And then remind them once they find something they're in love with, that, look, I know it's expensive. I'd be foolish to say anything else, but you work so hard. Don't you think you deserve something nice? I mean, short of building rapport and looking them in the eye and being honest, what the heck can you do? Because an $800 car payment is not a $300 car payment.
Yeah, I have to tell you something, Larry. It's not something. I saw your post the other day, and I loved it. And you and I have always had not always, but I have a similar view on training that you do. You could sit there, you could talk about formulas, you can talk about all this other crap, right? You can all these techniques, but rapport is everything. And when you said, you take a sheet of paper, put a pen in front of the customer and say, listen, I know you like the car. I know you're having a problem. Can you write down one reason why you should not buy this car? I love it. I thought that was brilliant. And I actually showed that to my partner at the lot, even though we're not in the same place at the moment.
Jeff, is there any chance you could call my wife and tell her I got something right? I mean, she probably won't believe you either, but a little encouragement might.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of I think it was a trainer years ago. He said, they'd finance the space shuttle if you made it affordable, and I think part of that is coming true these days. So really, to me, it's about understanding the objection, but more importantly, understanding how to make it affordable for that person, and really having a conversation about affordability. I mean, Larry was talking about it earlier. Yeah, I'll finance that $80,000 car for $200 a month. I mean, that doesn't make sense. But more importantly, why doesn't it make sense? And I think that's why you want to bring people back who've had the baptism in fire of the last time this went around. And more importantly, they should probably at least be in management roles. I mean, I just don't understand the philosophy of some of the dealers who, they got people in management who can't even handle that. But John, what are your thoughts there? Yeah.
But, just quickly, they have people in management that have never experienced it. This is one thing I'm noticing. Hey, Nathan, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Sorry I'm late. I had a demo that started late and just didn't really
start. Oh, that's okay.
Nathan, you should have been here earlier. We were all drunk and we were trying to spell your name. Nobody did well.
That's about right.
So actually, you know what? You're here. So let's ask you very quickly. What are you discovering with the people that you're dealing with? What are you hearing about inventory issues?
Jeez. I mean, the inventory issues I deal with just from a technical perspective end up tying into, what's available versus what are we showing. And I think we're having more of those issues, particularly when it pertains to like digital retailing tools, where we're fixating, pricing on a specific car, but the car's not even there. Right? And then it's do we show cars that are in transit? Do we not show cars in transit? Those are the biggest things that I'm hearing about in this kind of present day market we've got, if that answers your question.
Well, I gotta love that. So if somebody goes online to a new car dealer's website or the manufacturer's website, and they build I'm trying to think of something that's really scarce at the moment. I can't even think of it, to be honest. So they build something really scarce. And then they go say, who's got one? and the systems doesn't find one who's got one, but then sends the lead to somebody. And they get somebody that says, hey, listen, that's really great. Listen, I know you want to get this new, the 2029 Hyundai Santa Fe, whatever it's called, whatever year it is, but let me show you a 2023 Tucson.
Yeah, well, even to take it a step further, so I work with a lot of AI, right? On the sales side, particularly, is one of the areas, and we assess a lot of it too. But what we've seen is that a lot of the dealers don't want to say, "We don't have that car." If we have another one very similar coming in transit, tell the AI to say, like, to not say we don't have this car or we just sold this car, which you're starting to get into this gray area. I feel of what do we have, what do we not have? How similar is it to say, to not say we don't have this? Because when they come into the store, then you're like, oh, we just sold that. Like, what did we just do all this work for?
Yeah, but they got to remember that 60% of people buy something completely different from what they came in on. So I mean, I think it's interesting that that's still the philosophy, the old bait and switch. Let's bring them in on the car we don't have. But at the end of the day, if that customer's shopping 7 dealers and they pick the dealer that says they have it, and then they go into that dealer, we know they only go into one dealer generally these days. That's probably not a good move if you're a chess player.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a decision I think the dealer has to make on whether or not, are these things close enough? And I guess I'm not in a position to say what's right or wrong because I know the market is difficult. We're not printing money anymore like we were 2 years ago even. But to your point even, that's why my dealers want them to come into their store because chances are they can salvage that even if they did, they weren't fully honest about the situation because
Right.
they're there to car. And if they're in front of you, I mean, that's these guys' jobs to sell a car.
Larry, what should a salesperson say? This is a perfect right alignment there. When somebody just like Nathan just said, they want this, whatever, I'll go that 2029 Santa Fe. They keep getting newer on me. And then they call them up and they say, hey, I want this car. And what do they say? What should they really do?
I'll tell you what, you probably called some other dealers, and I don't know if you know what we do here at So-and-so Motors, but we treat our customers the way they want to be treated. We are currently have some vehicles that are similar to that, and believe it or not, we're in the process of dealer trading for some vehicles like that. So if you can honor us with your time, I'm going to do my very best to help you, because where Ian is 100% correct, and they do change their mind, I think it's even more than 60%. The problem is you got a worse than 50-50 shot if somebody drives in for that car and you tell them it's just sold, you've blown every shot you have at building trust. I think there's no substitute for the truth. Here's what this is. Here's what we're going to do. And then, the worst that happens, Jeff, they go to the other dealer who lied to them, and then they go back to you because at least you were honest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember many moons ago selling Honda Civics in 2006, and we had none. We had the one you could drive, and there was a 6-month wait for a car. And people come in, they go, can I get a discount? And I'd go, well, yeah, we don't have a car. They're like, I'm going to go buy a Mazda 3. I'm like, okay. Like, I don't have anything to sell. Like, I have this car that we're driving. That's pretty much it. So, but if you told them that, some of them would wait. There's nothing you can do. But I think now our challenge is we're transitioning from, take it or leave it, to how can I help you? And that's a big transition because the salesman who had it easy now has it difficult. So they've got to adapt to the truth, in my opinion. And I think the truth is the right answer. I mean, in my opinion. Yeah.
Hold on. Sorry, Peter. Just 1 second. Otherwise, I'll just forget this. Before, they were told by their boss to say, I don't got one. Next. Now they say, tell them you got it because maybe we can switch it. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah. So going back to what was just said, forgive me if I'm wrong. I believe it was Ian's sister.
Yeah.
Was looking for a Toyota minivan.
Yeah. My niece, but that's fine. Close enough.
Family member, and basically.
Excuse me, your sister and niece being close only works if you live in Arkansas.
Having said that, the challenge became they didn't have the car. And what did she end up doing? She went to another brand, correct?
Yeah, she's looking at the Kia and the Toyota. So the Toyota said, yeah, we're charging over MSRP, and it's a 2-year wait. So I said, well, you should go look at Kia. At least they're going to have a car this year, maybe. So she ended up buying a different model. I mean, it's still, I think, a couple months because they don't have any inventory, but 2 years? Like, who's going to wait 2 years? Like, I've never waited more than 90 days for a car in my life. Like, that's crazy. So, and over MSRP too. Well, why? Because it's a market adjustment.
But the whole thing is that what's happening in Toronto, and this is happening with Toyota, that people put down a couple $100 at 5 dealerships.
Yeah.
And whoever gets the car first is where they buy it. Toyota doesn't do any digital retailing measurements, so they don't know that they have multiple orders coming in on factory orders. And then the cars show up, and now they're available, so they start going down the list and saying, "Hey, we have this opportunity. You can get this Toyota XLE hybrid that no one has, and then be there." So there's so many different problems on inventory and challenges. The manufacturer has to work with the dealership. The dealership has to work with the manufacturer, and we got to stop the madness of what's happening with the consumer and the dealership, because the consumer will put down deposits everywhere to just get what they want.
But it gets worse, Peter, though. It gets worse because my brother's a big Toyota guy. He has a couple Toyotas in his household that he bought at the same dealer. They still mistreated him, so they may lose him as a customer over this. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. His wife was so upset that she doesn't want to buy a Toyota again. So, I mean, to me, it's not just about the fact that you got to wait. That's fine. It is what it is. But there's other options. Like my niece has a new daughter, and she's probably going to have another soon. They need a van. Like, when? Now. Like, it's kind of eminent, right?
Dan, I believe the quote you're looking for is from my hero, Ben Franklin, who said, "We are all born ignorant, but one has to work really hard to stay stupid."
I'm going to tell you something, guys, and here's something that's going to come out very soon, is the days of people sitting and waiting to be mistreated are going out the window. They haven't hit the Toyota stores right now. And I mean, my Toyota days, the Toyota, it isn't anymore, but Toyota was the bastion of good customer business. Kaizen, the term they use. And it was, if a dealer stepped out of line, there was somebody corporate there that was prepared to wrap the dealer's knuckles around things. And that's coming. I'm so shocked to see Toyota dealers playing that game. In fact, they're making Chrysler Jeep dealers look like really ethical people. Because you know something? First of all, I got to tell you about hiring salespeople. You want to get a salesperson that knows how to handle a difficult market, hire an ex-Chrysler salesperson, because they know what it's like to have 72 dealers with 7,200 cars within 7 blocks.
Yep.
2, somebody's got to look at the long picture, because it's going to come back and bite these dealers. It really is. If it was me, I wouldn't have gone to buy it. Yeah, I'd have gone to buy a Pacifica.
I tried.
Did you?
I tried. No.
Pacifica's a good vehicle. There's dealers everywhere with them. But anyways, moving right along to the inventory thing, and guys, we're down to our last 15 minutes here. How should dealers be dealing with inventory? And we've got 4 very brilliant people staring us in the face, and then you and I. So it depends on where you want to put that. How should we deal with inventory, and what are your top 5 recommendations on dealing with inventory? Because, whether the Toyota dealers like it or not, they're going to be tight for Sienna XLE all-wheel drives with all that but from that, they're going to have to sell vehicles. What's your top 5 recommendations? And let's start with Peter.
Okay, so the first recommendation is understanding digital retailing and stop the madness of the pop-ups to get a price. Give the people the opportunity to get the price and make their decision. Second is make sure that every single vehicle that you have on your lot is online, priced and pictured accordingly to sell. Do not have bad pictures. Do make sure that every picture, and I don't care, don't use stock pictures, use real pictures. 3 is train your staff on your inventory. Make sure that they're doing their lot walks every day. They know where it is. They know how to operate in the dealership as in directional challenge. 3 is give the customer the data that they want when they call in. Do not hold back. Give it to them. And 4 is make sure that you open up your opportunities for dealer trading and everything else to move that inventory around. Because if you're going to take cars off someone else, sure enough, they're going to take cars off of you. So make sure that you supply, because you're right now the actual success model is a long-term customer value. You can't have the churn and burn right now.
Perfect. So I'm going to go next to Nathan because Gina, you mentioned, I believe, 3 of your 5 were digital or technology related. That's for Nathan's specialty. What are your recommendations for dealing with inventory now?
My thoughts are, if you want business quickly, you gotta be operating correctly, right? So that means your infrastructure needs to be set up from a digital perspective, and you should be getting to every lead, whether that's AI, which seems to be the quickest, easiest route out of the box. That's why Penske's been so successful through all of this. Is that they use a tool that basically helps them set appointments, it helps push and qualify. I think that's a really important part of the process, whether you have a BDC doing it, whether you have a killer sales team, or whether you're using AI. To me, the most important thing is being able to get to that client and meet them, immediately. Because first to speed is helpful, with having a conversation. Because in my opinion, a lot of times, whoever gets back to me if I'm going to buy a car, that's who I'm going to talk to. And like you guys said, it's 60% chance we're not even looking at the same car in the end.
Yeah.
So that speed to response is so incredibly important. Personally, I would go the honesty route, just like some of you were saying, and let's tell them what we have in our inventory. Let's tell them what we don't, and let's come up with some kind of response if it's in transit or whatnot. But again, being honest is going to keep those guys with us for the long term, compared to they show up at the store and we don't have what they're asking for. We don't have what we promised them, even worse. So I think that's a big piece of it. And Peter made a great point just about the training of the staff as well, on how to sell these cars and what these cars mean to us, so on and so forth. I think is very important, in this whole piece. And then, of course, the trade part, like where else can we get cars from? What other avenues do we have to work within? Let's make sure that we're always asking those questions and capitalizing as much as we can, to have inventory, to keep inventory. So those would be my points.
Yeah, I actually did a survey, Jeff, before the show last week on how long someone would wait to talk to a person in sales in automotive. And it's not complete yet, but the highest number was less than a minute was the expectation. So just so you know.
And then the average right now is probably
15 minutes,
4 hours. Well, it's interesting too, because Nathan, you brought up something very interesting. I don't know how many times, and Larry's going to nod his head like crazy, so his glasses will fall off, where people have contacted me over the years and said, "Do you have a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da?" Oh, okay. So what do you like about it? And they'll say, "Well, no, I just want to know if you have one." Oh, okay. Is it for your family or whatever? And they'll go, "Well, I don't really want it. I just want to know if you have it because somebody told me I should go look at the car." It's actually very interesting. So, Larry, I did mention your name because John's sitting there wondering what's going on. But Larry,
my recommendations are simple because everything I do seems to go back to old school stuff. Any used car manager worth his salt does a used car walk and make sure his people know what he has, what they have to sell, gets him in and out of the shop, to the line as quick as possible. We need to do it with the new cars. We need to sit down and make everybody aware. Listen, you see these 2 cars? Okay? Here's what we need to sell. And by the way, here's your whiffing. Here's what's in it for you if you sell. Here's a little bit of a bonus. Because when you compare what it's costing in floor plan to incentivize these people to put together a little bit of a different individual bonus, makes all the difference in the world. And of course, you have to tie it in with digital. But the problem is, and I think both Nathan and Peter will agree with me, the hell good is it if they get there and you're fumbling and bumbling and you piss them off? So it's got to be everything. It's like terrorism. The terrorists only have to be right once. We have to be right all the time. The pictures have to be right.
Here's the other thing tying into Nathan and technology is that 4 years ago, back in 2019, when nothing was wrong with dealerships and dealerships were running around saying everything's great, even though that we're still 30% above 2019 in profitability, and the sky is falling now. The technology that we have today supersedes anything that we had back then, and we can turn around and scrape phone calls, which we never could before, and actually find all the answers. And it's using that technology. And that's the number one thing that I would say for dealers. Forget about inventory. Let's start using the technology that's available to us to maximize the customer experience.
Oh, 100%.
Well, you know, it's something I have to tell you this. It all comes down to one thing, and it's the number one cliche in the car business is attitude. And, you know, this dealer with this Sienna, I don't know, you were there, Ian, obviously I wasn't, with your niece. You know, did anybody bother asking her why she wants one, or did they just sort of just deal with, yeah, well, we got one 2 years? And maybe, you know, the old story is, why do you want that? Because somebody told me I should have the XLE limited with the Jumba group, you know.
Well, because my brother's a fanboy. He's a Toyota person. So he's like, I looked at the Honda, I looked at the Kia. They didn't have a Kia, and they looked at the Toyota. And he said, I like the Toyota, but I can't get one. And then his wife was pissed because the guy was trying to charge over list. And I said, well, so why are you still even considering this vehicle?
Like, yeah, I would just walk away. So in the last 5 minutes, we're going to turn to John. John, what are your recommendations that you can tell dealers from your point of perspective? And by the way, Nathan already used the AI thing, so you have to come up with something different.
I mean, it's going to be a real simple kind of comment I'm going to make. But when I talk to dealers and say, you know, what we're happy with is you know, selling more cars and retaining more clients. And it's funny because I think that some dealers are focused only on that short-term goal, like people have been saying, which is selling more cars. And, you know, that's what Ian was getting at. It's like, let's just do a bait and switch, get them in no matter what, say whatever it takes to get them in and sell them whatever, right? Some dealers are looking a bit more strategically at the relationships, at the long term, and they're more into retaining more clients, like selling cars, yes, but also retaining clients and getting a good reputation and getting referrals. And I think that's, you know, at some level, these dealerships now are going to have to make that choice, whether they're going to try to only focus on the short game, which is, you know, using kind of old school, kind of sleazy tactics to sell as many cars as they can, or, you know, take someone who's looking for a subcompact car and tell them, you know what you really need is an SUV. That's not true. But maybe someone who's looking for a big SUV could go with a smaller SUV, and in that case, you're actually giving them, you know, an intelligent advice. You're really giving that expertise. You know, telling someone, no, you don't need a Sienna. No, you can use a Corolla. Yeah, get 2 Corollas. Yeah, 2 Corollas is better than 1 Sienna. Come on. I mean, a lot of people are doing it these days. I mean, I think you wanna check that out. So I think that's going to be, you know, that's a simple thing, but, you know, to look at, are we just selling cars, or are we also worried about the long-term relationships, the client retention, you know, and try to factor that stuff in terms of, you're the boss, you're the GSM, you're the GM. What are you telling? How are you training your sales reps to treat people, right?
Yeah. No, there's it's treatment everywhere, no matter what we do.
Yeah, I mean, and a quick plug for Dave. I called Dave, who I bought my vehicle from, as a Chrysler dealer, and he says, not only do I have a vehicle coming inbound, I'm happy to help, and happy to help her right now and get into that vehicle. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not all about there isn't problems. There are problems, but the obstacles are the way. There's also opportunities. I can't help you with a vehicle because I don't have it right now, but I will have it in a week. Why don't you come look at what I do have, and then I can put you into that vehicle that you want as soon as it gets here. So, I mean, that to me is, be of help. I got a thing here. I'm not sure who it's from, but it's called Give, Give, Give. I'm not sure where I got it from, but I always have it on my desk because at the end of the day, that's what's about. Yeah, exactly. But we're out of time. Final thoughts.
Well, I'll give you mine before the guys speak. Nice, lively conversation. Thanks, gentlemen. I mean, it's really a factor we've got to look at here. I mean, inventory. The bottom line is business should be business whether you've got cars or not. If you're gonna, we've had people on that have said, "Look, I'm charging over MSRP. This was 2 years ago, but I'm explaining to them why I'm doing it." Well, not a bad thing. I don't know. It's a great thing. It's just not a bad thing. But right now, you have people that still think, like this Toyota dealer, because I can't wait to see them crash and burn soon. People still think it's the old days. Look at all these people. Perfect example was Toyota BZXRX, I think was named after Elon Musk's kid. They were charging $5,000 over for these things. And every Toyota dealer I've been by has multitudes of them now. And now they're advertising them. So all of a sudden, you've got somebody, I would love to be that person that, "Sir, your car's here." Great. "Oh, how come all the cars are here?" "Oh, because I'm super." So now, here's the deal. You did my car in $100 order. I'm walking because somebody else on the street's going to actually give me a big discount. What do you want to do? Okay, bye-bye.
I would agree. I mean, at the end of the day, you're either setting yourself up for success or you're setting yourself up for failure. And short-term thinking is the problem, but also the opportunity. I mean, at the end of the day, treat customers right, and they'll come back and buy stuff from you. Even if you can't sell them stuff. Like I remember when I sold cars, even when I couldn't sell someone a car, I would follow them up like I sold them a car, and I still got referrals from the people who bought a Toyota, for example, to pick another brand, just because I didn't harass them when they bought something else. And I think that's really what it comes down to. There's one of our competitors that says about people, not cars, or people are more important. But really, it's about customers. It's about how are you taking care of that customer? And that's really what it comes down to. At the end of the day, brands are brands, but if you take care of that customer, shockingly, they'll switch brands for someone who maybe it isn't a better vehicle, but they took care of the customer. That's what it's really about. And I was trying to explain that to my niece. I know my brother's a big Toyota guy, but I said, "Have you looked at these other cars?" I mean, when I was looking at my first car, my dad forced me to look at every car in the market, even though I ended up buying a Honda. He still said, "You got to look at everything." Why? Because you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Now, today it's about experience, and more importantly, it's about treating people right. But that's my thoughts. Any other final thoughts? Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I would say 100% it's all about the customer. The very first car book I ever read was Customers for Life by Carl Sewell. And it's a mantra that I've always lived by. Every single customer is worth 30 car deals. And if you look at it in those manners, you will always be successful.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we are out of time, and I'm out of battery on my laptop. So I wish you guys all the best. Thanks, Nathan, for tuning in.
Yeah.
I know you got other things going on. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Next week's the advisory show, so it's going to be fun.
And stay tuned for more detail on VidCalls version 2 as we prepare for launch. And special thanks to everybody. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you soon.
Oh, bye-bye.
Thank you.